Alright, welcome back to the Golden Sun No S&Q tutorial series. Last time we went through Tret and we collected Zephyr. And we left off at the start of Mogall Forest. Now this video might be a little bit shorter than the other ones, as at this point in the game the dungeons become quite short. We kind of rush through them, we complete them, we beat the boss, we continue on. Unlike, say, Mercury, where there's a lot of the dungeon is short in Mercury, but there's a lot of complex thinking going on. Like everything from here on out is relatively straightforward. We'll see that as we get into this a little bit more, but the first thing we want to talk about is your party setup for Mogall. Recall that last time we have a whole bunch of Jinn still on standby, so what we're going to do before we do anything else is we're going to have a go and basically run through to the next screen. And that's going to give us the recovery tick that we need. Okay. There's a little menu that we have to do here, and we're going to do things in a very particular way to optimize what is to come. I should point out that in the notes that the assumption is that we're not going to stand by all Jinn at this point. You can stand by all Jinn if you like, but it's kind of optional for this specific menu. Here on out we will be doing it, and you'll see what I mean, but all we really need for the fights that are upcoming is to have 3 Jupiter Jinn on standby. So to do this, what are we going to do? This menu that we're going to do is we're going to take Breeze, we're going to give it to Isaac, and get Gus, swap the Forge, and now we're set up in this sense. Stand by these 2 Jinn so that Ivan is as fast as he possibly can be. Anyway, and there we go. We're set up. From here on out, what we're going to be doing after every encounter is stand by everything and set Forge. We'll cover why that is in a moment, but this is the general. Stand by all, set Forge. Stand by all, set Forge. It's just this very first menu. We don't have to do that because these Jinn are already standby for us. So that's kind of nice. So why do we stand by all and set Forge? Well, the strategy in this part of the game is to summon Procne as much as you possibly can, basically. Ivan summoning Procne will kill almost anything in this dungeon, even if it's not targeted. So moles, bats, creepers, they will all die, no problem at all. The only things that won't die to Procne are bone fighters and death heads, only if they're not targeted by Procne. So if you can imagine a triple bone fighter party, you summon Procne on the middle bone fighter, the ones on the 2 sides don't die. So the left and the right side don't die. They have about like 5 HP left, so it's not a big deal. But to get around that, we have Mia here with Forge set. So with Mia with Forge set, she's really fast. 58 agility, that's very speedy. She also gets access to Douse and Prism. Douse and Prism are much faster than Frost, Tundra, and Ice isn't really useful, but Frost and Tundra in this instance. So, Mia will outturn the enemies that don't die, and Mia can finish them off with a synergy. Ideally, Mia goes before Ivan, so that we have Prism and then synergy, or vice versa. We can do synergy with Ivan, then Procne with Mia, depending on where the agilities line up, but generally it's going to be synergy with Mia, Procne with Ivan. So that's the whole reason behind the setup, and why we continually set Forge after every fight, even though it doesn't look like we're doing anything. So, I'll just stick with this setup for the time being. This is entirely equivalent to that because, as you can see, the 2 people whose agilities matter is Ivan and Mia. Mia has Forge set, Ivan is in base class, so we're all good. We have some damage on people, so we should probably heal that at some point. We're not really set up for that at the moment, but we'll do it in a minute, that's not a problem. Again, in this area, Ivan is going to outspeed pretty much everything, and so will Mia. Case in point, summon Procne and everything dies. And that's basically every fight until way later in the game. Summon Procne, things die. Summon Procne, things die. Once you get here, the Jinn click, stand by all, set Forge, and we have an opportunity to heal off this damage, so now we're completely safe. Now we just progress. It's pretty much as simple as that. So yeah, Procne and Ivan will carry us for the rest of the speedrun, basically. At some point, Procne won't kill things anymore, in which case we upgrade to the next tier 4, but basically Ivan, the whole strategy in the speedrun is for Ivan to outspeed everything and blow them up with a summon before they get an ability to, the chance to have an action. So, while we're getting through this dungeon, I should tell you, the whole reason we get Zephyr is so that we can get access to Procne to do this strategy. Zephyr is about a 2.5 minute detour to collect, but having access to Procne this early just makes up for that time. In any percent classic, which allows for save and quit, we don't get Zephyr because we can manipulate and don't have to take any fights. But in this category, every fight we take, Procne is saving anywhere from like 5 seconds to 20 seconds. That the time adds up so quickly. So Procne is just amazing. Alright, we've gotten through to Quartz, we've solved the puzzles, and now we're here. We can actually interact with the Quartz from this distance, so keep that in mind if you're trying to minimize the amount of encounters that you're taking. The way we beat Quartz is a little bit unusual, but it's basically summon rushing him, so make sure everything is standby for this. And we can start the fight. So, Quartz can run away, and that's really annoying, so if Quartz runs away, that's really frustrating because you have to reset the room and come back, and that's just not fun for anybody. But here we're actually going to defend with Ivan, just in case he does something mean to Ivan. Ivan being weak to Venus, that's something we should be mindful of. To finish this fight in a quick way, we can do this. So we can do Nereid, Procne with Isaac, Kieran with Garrett, and then just defend with Ivan. And away we go. No issue at all. There we go. We have Quartz. Now Quartz is on Mia, which is actually interesting. So, why is this interesting? It's interesting because with Quartz set, Mia also is faster than everything in the room, in the dungeon. The only downside is Froth is slower than Prism, so even though we have Quartz on Mia, I am going to try and set Forge as much as possible. So we run along, we get a Gen Recovery. That returns Procne, so what we can do here is stand by all, and then Forge will recover and will be set up for the next fight. So just keep in mind that with the setup that we just did, Procne recovers first, so one Gen click, stand by all, and then forget about it. Really easy. That's also really helpful because sometimes you can get bad encounter rate and get an extra encounter and then things go wrong and then you have Procne judge. Okay, so this here is an annoying encounter because there are 4 enemies. Having 4 enemies means that, well, things probably won't die. So we'll throw some stuff into that last target there, and otherwise we're going to have Procne kind of carry us. Probably should have focused on the dirges now that I think about it, but whatever. Doesn't matter too much. Here we go. Easy peasy. Next up, we're going to get the Elven Shirt. Ah, here's a good counter. So, as I mentioned before, the whole reason why we keep setting Forge is for Mia to use a synergy in a case where there's a Bone Fighter or something else on the side. So, here you can see there's a Bone Fighter on the right hand side, this Bone Fighter here. Simply we don't need to target it or anything, we just use Prism on the middle guy, it doesn't really matter. Then summon Procne, and away we go. As I mentioned, ideally the synergy is used before the summon to avoid the summon animation, but with this setup we don't really get the luxury to choose. A Crystal Powder and a Sleep Bomb. That Sleep Bomb's actually useful. I should say that at this point in the game you can get Sleep Bomb drops. If you get them, it means you don't have to do something later in Calais, but we'll drop it for the time being, just so we can keep things consistent. Once we get to Calais, we'll speak more about that in detail. Alright. Grab the Elven Shirt. Why do we get the Elven Shirt? Well, as I mentioned earlier, the whole strategy in the speedrun from here on out is Ivan will go fast, Ivan will destroy things with summons. So eventually we're going to need the Elven Shirt so that Ivan can stay ahead of everybody in agility and actually allowed to do this. That is only really relevant from post-Kraken onwards. But for the time being, we're going to give this to Mia. What does the Elven Shirt do? I should have explained that. It gives you a 50% bonus to your agility, so I go from 63 to 94. It's a huge boost in agility. The reason why I'm giving it to Mia at this point is that now I know for a fact that Mia will go before Ivan. That means if I'm doing the Prism Procne strat, Prism will go first, then Procne, and it will all be fine. Alright. That's pretty much it. We continue through this area. Sometimes you can use Procne with Mia to kill things. Generally try to use Ivan as much as possible, but if there's one target, Procne with Mia will kill, so seeing as I know Mia's going to go first, it just saves a little bit of text from Ivan defending. Don't worry too much about that, it just saves fractions of a second if you catch it, but if you don't, that's also fine. So in this instance, actually, if you used Procne with Mia, the moles wouldn't die on the edge. So the left and the right mole wouldn't die, so just keep that in mind, that Ivan's Procne is a lot stronger than Mia's. Alright, so now we come up to the Killer Ape, and the Killer Ape is a pretty dangerous fight, actually. Certainly one of the more difficult, one of the first bosses that's a bit random and can just make you have a bad time. The ability we don't want to see is Ransack. Ransack is very strong, and we don't have a lot of armor, and it will probably take someone down to critical HP, and if that happens, we don't have a lot of recourse to end the fight quickly, also to recover the HP. In theory, we have the ideal fight is set in such a way that we end the fight in 2 turns, but things can go wrong and we just have to adapt accordingly. The other thing that can go wrong is if Killer Ape uses War Cry on somebody and they get stunned. If that happens, then that's bad news as well. We just have to work our way around that by getting off as much damage as possible. Right, so the Killer Ape setup is really straightforward. In fact, the setup has already been completed. All that menuing that we've done, the weird menu at Tret, the weird menu at the start of this to set up Procne, has allowed us to set up the Djinn exactly how we want them for Killer Ape. The only thing I should have done before that is to heal people. So I'm just going to heal with Mia just so that Isaac doesn't lose all of his PP. And then we can set the 3 Djinn that we need to set for this fight. And now we're good to go. So all we needed is Elven Shirt on Mia, set these 3 Djinn. Generally speaking, the exact position of any Djinn on standby doesn't matter. It will matter on Manticore, but aside from that, it doesn't really matter too much. The Djinn that are set, however, very, very important to the strategy, and are in the positions they are for a very, very good reason. So just keep that in mind. Alright. So, let's jump into the Killer Ape fight. This guy's a bit of a jerk. Like I said, Ransack is something that's very scary. Notice how at the moment only Mia is going to outspeed the Killer Ape. The first thing we're going to do actually is use Zephyr. Zephyr is a Djinn which doubles the agility of all of your party members. As you can see, we have like 102, 53, and 58. Those will all be doubled, and they'll all exceed the Killer Ape's 94 agility, so that's kind of useful. Get off that Zephyr, get off Fever, Flare Wall instead of a summon so that we can minimize the amount of Djinn recovery in the fight, and Granite just to protect ourselves. If something goes wrong in this first turn, at least Granite gives us something to play with. We could use Granite on the second turn, but I find that using Granite on the first turn gives you a little bit more agency in the fight to combat a bad situation. So, kind of brother's choice. If you don't want to use Granite now, you could use Procne with Ivan, but I think this is slightly better. So, Granite, Zephyr, and we got attack. That's totally fine. You don't have to worry about anything. So the next turn, we're going to throw some summons into him. We're going to use Nereid, Sibel. Sibel is one of the worst summons in the game because it's got a horribly long animation. In this particular instance, Sibel is going to do about 270 damage. You just can't overlook that kind of damage. We could use Ramses to try and be more efficient, but using Sibel here actually takes off an entire Killer Ape action. So we're gonna eat the time loss and use the frame loss dinosaur and do that. More Flare Walls with Garrett because he's really strong, and Procne with Ivan. I'm expecting to kill on the next turn, so using my summons on this turn means that the gen recoveries won't happen as long as I kill Killer Ape on the next turn, which will happen, provided nobody gets stunned, fingers crossed. At this point, we've done the majority of the damage to Killer Ape, and the fight should be winnable regardless of what happens next. Warcry on Garrett. Okay, so that's a pain. I say that. Okay, so now Killer Ape's going to get an additional action, which is totally fine. Normally what we would do at this point is we would throw 2 synergies into the Killer Ape and attack with Garrett to guarantee the range. That's not going to happen this time. We're going to use Ice. I'm actually going to use Cure on Garrett just to ensure that he doesn't die. I'm going to use Kieran with Garrett because it's slightly stronger, and I'm going to use Plasma with Ivan. This should kill, but it may not kill because I haven't done the damage calcs in a while. I was a tiny bit worried that Garrett would die, so I'm just going to heal him up. Okay, that's fine. Killer Ape's not going to die, but this is fine. It's better safe than sorry, right? At this point, it's relatively easy to kill him. We just use Plasma with Ivan, and it's fine. A few other pointers about Killer Ape, if we go back. So on Sibel, can you walk right anybody other than Garrett, please? There we go. Great. Okay, a few other pointers about Killer Ape. First thing, Killer Ape is not... Killer Ape resists Jupiter. He doesn't resist Mercury like you would expect. So when you're trying to finish him off with abilities, and let's say Mia has Prism because it took that extra turn like it did just then, Prism is stronger than Plasma. So keep that in mind. After a boost, after the Procne boost on Ivan, the Jupiter synergy is stronger against Killer Ape. So using Plasma in that instance with Ivan is totally fine. If we're going to finish this fight off in the usual fashion, it would look like this. And Kieran. Bang, there you go. That's what the fight usually looks like if Garrett doesn't get hindered by Killer Ape. So yeah, that's the only other thing you need to be aware of, is that if you do need to make up extra damage, Mercury is not better than... Mercury is better than Jupiter, even though intuitively that's not the case. Other than that, this fight's pretty free. We've seen how it can go wrong, and even in that instance, we were able to, throw a cure into Garrett to be safe and still finish the fight. So don't worry too much about it. Like, as long as you get the second turn off without... Well, at least you're able to dump all your summon damage into the Killer Ape, the fight should be winnable from that point. Even if somebody dies, there's a revive right around the corner, so it's not the end of the world. I mean, it sucks, but it's not the end of the world. But the fight's very, very winnable. The only other thing to keep in mind is we will go through the Gianna, and then we'll kill the video there. But a lot of your gen here haven't recovered. The only gen that have recovered are the Procne gen, which again, super helpful. We can stand by all just coming out of Mogall if you're feeling concerned, because there is this little passage here where it's highly likely, or non-zero chance, that you'll get an encounter on the way to Xi'an. Looks like about 40% to get an encounter or not. And having Procne on standby could just be generally helpful for that. You don't have to do it. I don't personally do it, but it's something you could consider to get you through to Xi'an without issue. Right, next time we will do Xi'an, we'll do Corona, we'll do Alton, we'll do Lamakan, and then, yeah, that seems like a lot of stuff, but we're going to get through all of that lightning fast. We've already established the foundations of the strategy and using Procne and as wherever we can. There's just one anomaly that we need to talk through in the overworld, so it's not that big of a deal. Anyway, as always, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know if I need to redo anything or if something's not clear, or if you want me to explain anything else, and we can go from there. So appreciate it once again, and we will see you in the next video.